This is Matt Garabedian, the Phenom Investor, and we're recording podcast number 5 of the Phenom Investor Blueprint. How you guys doing today? Super excited to be here, and this is a great day because I've got a great friend and mentor of mine, Mark Evans, DM, all the way in. We call it Fresno, California. Some people locally call it Frez, yes, but Mark, thank you and welcome to Fresno, California.
Definitely, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I never thought in a million years that I'd have the DM in Fresno, and we joke about it, and he said I kind of undersold the valley here in California, but you know, guys in West Palm, he's traveling the world, and I'm like, why would this guy want to come and hang out in my little community? But anyway, he's here, and we're super thankful for that. Mark agreed to come on the podcast today, so I'm excited to ask Mark some questions. If you guys are watching or listening for the first time and have yet to meet Mark, Mark is a 7-time best-selling author. He's written many books. He's the CEO of American Wealth Builders, one of the largest turnkey companies, providers of real estate in the country. They know him as the DM, deal maker, and dream maker, like your mother says, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did I leave anything out here? I mean, all around great guy and a friend. So
no, just handsome as hell. And no, yeah, that's good.
Awesome. Well, I told Mark before we start, I'm just gonna kind of fire away, and I started the Phenom podcast because I wanted to kind of ask some cool questions. There's a lot of information out there for real estate purposes. How to do real estate. Hey, what's your direct mail campaign look like? Hey, what are you doing for this? And I think it's kind of played out, to be honest. So I wanted to get a guy like Mark in the room, maybe ask him some questions that he may have not have answered before. So we'll just kind of roll with it, Mark, and
sure,
see how it goes. So I'm gonna this is gonna be kind of like a fun format. So
just ask me easy questions.
Easy. Cool. We'll start you off slowly. Okay. All right. Here's one that's kind of fun.
Okay.
I have a question. Like, what would you say your superpower is?
Deal making.
Yeah. So putting deals together, finding someone's need.
Right. Well, that's the end result of what my real superpower is actually listening to people. Right? Deal making comes from actually listening, hearing what the real problem is, addressing it in a real manner, and then knowing a proper place to place them so they can actually get the result they're seeking.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, you spent a little bit of time yesterday with my team, and you told them, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Yeah, listen twice as much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. So that's one of the biggest things we forget as salespeople. We've got to listen to how we can help people and see if there's a solution. If someone doesn't need our help, we can't do anything for them, right?
Sure. I think the thing is going with a serving attitude. It's like anything though. In the beginning, a lot of times you over talk because you're nervous.
Yeah.
So it's like anything. If you're getting ready to go on the first date and you get asked to go, you're like, oh my God, I should never said that. As opposed to just like, say hi, how are you doing? Boom, let them talk. Let the conversation naturally start progressing.
Sure. That's great advice. So your superpower is deal making.
Yes.
Hence the DM, right? Okay, cool. So the first one was easy. Where do you get your best ideas?
The best ideas. On my free days, like on my, my DM days where I'm just sitting around the house doing absolutely nothing.
Okay.
I know a lot of times it's kind of like the shower moments.
Yeah.
When you're hanging out in the shower and you're like, oh my God, this is it. I'm finally going to be rich.
Most of those happen on the toilet for me.
Yeah. No, sure. Because the reason all this stuff happens is because we go into an environment that allows our mind to like actually work. Instead of being reactive and just being on the phone, whatever, It's actually just getting away. So I try to do that at least, once a month at least, if not way more.
Sure.
Where I'm hanging out, zero phone, zero internet, I may be watching TV, not even really paying attention to what the TV's doing. As you know, I like to travel, so for me, like hanging out at the house, just sitting on the balcony in Malibu, for example, or sitting out back smoking a cigar.
Right.
By myself, no one else is around.
Just you solo.
Yeah.
Right, and then your brain just works.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable at first.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I could be doing this, and this, but just get away.
I have to preface the conversation because I know Mark pretty well. He's been a mentor of mine for the last couple of years, so I have a little bit more insight than I would on another guest. And so, I've heard Mark say in the past that you kind of shut your brain down, if you will, of that business activity after a certain time in the evening,
sure.
right?
Yeah. I do at like 6 p.m. ish. So I used to do a lot of webinars at like 9 o'clock. I wouldn't get to bed till 2 or 3 in the morning. I'm up at 5 or 6 in the morning. The next day is really rough. I was actually causing problems for myself. And I just started asking myself questions like, why is this happening? What can I do not to do that? So any kind of high level stimulation of business, because we love what we do,
Right.
you know, it just kind of like, I just got to slow, for me personally, I got to slow it down so I can actually go to bed.
Yeah, that's probably some advice that I'm trying to take into consideration because, you know, I'm on the West Coast and most of the buddies of mine are on the East Coast and they're waking up and I'm going to bed and I'm like texting into the group and asking questions and like going crazy. And so my mind naturally starts, it's very creative. I start thinking about things like I feel like I missed opportunities during the day, so it kind of drives me crazy. But I'm trying to like, you know, that's great advice. Like, how do you turn it off? Like my wife always says, come home, you know, your mind just keeps going. How do you turn it off, right? So that's something that if you're out there wondering about, you know, how to kind of cause a little bit of break, it's good, you know, just be cognizant of that, right? Just take time to put your thoughts maybe on paper, right? Get them out of your head and move forward.
Yeah.
Okay, great. What makes you great?
What makes me great? Knowing I'm not great.
No, that's a great,
I mean,
great answer.
that's the real answer.
Right.
I'm not great. I'm still learning every day. I'm excited. I'm very curious of how to have better, like we were talking yesterday, like how can you gamify the process? How do you like when you're talking about like, hey, I feel like I'm behind the 8 ball, you know, being here in Cali, I actually feel the opposite. I think we have a major advantage being here, being 3 hours behind. I almost feel like they're playing catch up to us because the world does run on the East Coast time. It's just the facts. So I actually feel like I'm getting a free 3 hours a day of doing nothing because the day goes by. Because I'm waking up still at like 5 or 6 in the morning. I'm hanging out doing my own stuff. But, you know, my calls, I do two 10-minute calls with my teams because I have a couple companies. And just like, hey, what's going on? I was on, you know, even today from 7 a.m. till like 7:20, I'm doing calls.
Right.
And after that, I'm like, oh, I have really not a whole lot else to do
it's
for a while. So, you know, there's a lot of, I feel like I'm actually in an advantage position.
That's a great point. And, you know, we talk a lot about, you're first to admit, right? Like if you're not, you know, you're not great, like you're open to learning and always growing, and you just attended a mastermind for yourself, you know, a 100K mastermind, and you're always stretching and growing, trying to improve, right? So you're never satisfied. You're never at the point where, hey, you know, I got where I needed to be. I don't need to continue to stretch this, right?
Well, the world's ever changing, right? So I'm changing, my team's changing, the product's changing. How could we ever think that we're great? Because like all this stuff is constantly moving. Michael Jordan doesn't think he's great. He thinks he's good.
Right.
But that's what wakes him up in pursuit of greatness.
Sure.
And it can be kind of, you know, tacking too, right? Because it is that balance. Like if you're good, pursuing great, and everyone in the world's like, oh my God, you're doing awesome. And in your head, you're like, dude, I suck. I'm not doing anything. I need 10 rings. I really think like Tom Brady, he doesn't think he's great. He knows he's good, but he's not great because he didn't win the championship.
Yeah, I've heard something the other day where like they have like they're always in crisis mode.
Sure.
You know, even the guys that win the Super Bowl, you hear stories of like Jerry Rice. I'm a big 49er fan. The day after they win the Super Bowl, this in the 80s, you know, he's on the practice field the very next day running sprints. I mean, like that's, you know, a whole nother level of commitment.
Well, that and, you know, depression sets in. Depression's real. Like, you know, like the guys that went to the moon, right? I think they all had major depression. Okay, you get to the moon, now what do you accomplish? What else is there?
Right.
You win a Super Bowl, that's what you dreamed about your whole life. Now what? You better show up to the field because you're only as good as your last game.
Wow.
Right? Just like real estate, you're only as good as your last deal. You're only as good as your last team building meeting. Like all this stuff is compound. Everyone talks about compounding money. It's really compounding of time and effect, and, you know, the cause and effect of where you're going.
I think we've all talked about this before, but like we enjoy the process and the environment, right? The goal is just the outcome.
Sure.
Right? Like, you know, but when you enjoy the work and you enjoy the process and you enjoy what you do, the outcome is just a byproduct, right? Or the profit, or the, you know, the deal you close, or, you know, the new car you buy, or whatever your goal is, right? But like you achieved that goal, and I think that's a big driver for you, right, Mark? Like goal setting and achieving, and then like, okay, what's next?
Sure. And again, it's one of those things you got to be careful with, because what's next could be bigger, it could be scarier. Getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
That leads to my next question. What is your BHAG? And if you don't know what a BHAG is, it's your big, hairy, audacious goal. What would be a BHAG for you, like today? Like, that's cool for you right now.
Yeah, no, for me it's weight loss.
Weight loss.
It's health. It's health.
That's a good one.
Because I think the finance side I'm good with. I definitely going to grow more assets in a different class basis and all that, more passive. I really want to inspire 100 people across the world, kind of in the DM family world, where we're able to I'm all about impact. We talk about that all the time, but how can I make an impact with 100 people that will make an impact to their 1,000 followers and blah blah. I think it's a better way for me of what I stand for and what I'm good at is growing. I'm not good at going to 10,000 people and all that. I'm more like, hey, I want to focus on the guys that are actually doing something. Help the guys that get it more.
Gotcha.
Right.
That's a great goal. That's a great goal. What do you struggle with the most?
Consistency.
Consistency.
Right. I think a lot of entrepreneurs will struggle with consistency. I know it's a weakness of mine. So what I try to do is in business, what I've done really good is handing off the consistent action pieces that are duplicatable, replicatable. And then, the truth is some people are the total opposite.
Right.
Right. They can't, they can't say, yes, let's do that. They're more like, well, what's the path? What's it look like? So that's the consistent actions to get the results. I'm good at here's the big vision. Who can we hire to put in place to do that?
Yeah, Mark, and that's one of the biggest things that's been impressed upon me and ingrained in me since I've met you and networking with the guys in the group and knowing a lot of the DM family, right? So
Sure.
A lot of those guys in the family, we all call each other, brothers, and it's a brotherhood and it's been awesome. But the biggest thing that I take away from that is everyone is open and vulnerable and willing to accept that we're not perfect. We're a long way from where we want to go, but we're open to stretching and growing and taking advice. And sometimes you get put on the hot seat, and you kind of get called out.
Sure.
But it kind of breaks you down to build you up.
Yeah,
it's been amazing.
Well, they're leading from the right place too.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Again, what is the term? Rich get richer, poor get poorer. From my experience, and again, I grew up poor, so I can talk about. Well, I grew up broke. I grew up in a poor family environment. But what happens is, poor people are talking about the weather, sports, this and that. Their vulnerabilities are more like, I don't know who's going to win, who won the basketball game last night. Right. That's their vulnerability. Our vulnerability when we're all hanging out, and it's not rich to get rich financially, it's rich to get, become a better person of ourselves today than we were yesterday, and keep growing, and then naturally things happen. So the conversations are so different. The vulnerabilities are like, man, listen, I care about my team members, but this person's just not pulling their weight. What should we do? I care about them. How do I help them? Who can I hire to make them better? As opposed to me, which unfortunately broke people do that.
Right.
It's all about them, and they're not really, it's like, oh, money isn't everything. Well, money is a lot, because if you want to give back to the charity and you have no money to give them, that's a big deal.
Yeah, you're stealing from everybody.
If your grandkid, if your parents are sick and you can't take care of them in a financial proper way, that's a problem. To me, they're accepting that responsibility. But I really think these are the conversations we have every day. It's our world. It's huge. I don't know. I can't even imagine if someone starts talking about the other crazy stuff. I almost blank out.
Right, yeah, it's kind of hard to have. We talked about this before, where I'm introverted. Sure. In a social scene, like when I was kind of out younger days hanging out, whenever we went to a social scene, I'm usually trying to huddle in the corner with a couple people that I have something in common in.
Same.
I was never bouncing around and talking to people and being the life of the party.
Yeah.
And then so I also find myself in that kind of mode, even as I'm older now. I seek out higher level conversations. Not really good at just the BS, right?
Well, it's quality over quantity.
Right.
But there is cool ways, I'm the same way. I like, though, to position. If you can position and get into the bar area. Yeah. I was more the guy buying people drinks so people would come to me.
Interesting.
As opposed to me going to them and saying, hey, what's going on? As opposed to, hey, you see that table over there, snag them a drink on me. And then naturally, what's the next conversation? Hey, who bought those drinks? Oh, that guy over there in the white hat. Oh, then they do this. Boom. Now they're coming to me. I'm better with that conversation too,
I like that.
that transaction.
That's a DM strategy right there. That's a gold nugget from the DM right there. Go buy drinks.
Go buy
people.
drinks. And then everyone's talking.
I love it. What piece of advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Go bigger.
Go bigger.
Yeah, go bigger. Don't focus on the drama. Fire faster.
Fire faster.
Right.
Yeah.
Gosh, I have lots of things.
Right.
Eat what you want because it's not going to be like that when you turn 40. eat more pizza.
Okay.
Because the truth is, when I was 18, man, I literally was working 16 hours a day. But I loved it. I never thought poor me.
Sure.
I just knew there was this is a means to an end, and this is what's going to get me to where I want to go.
Did you ever imagine you'd be where you're at now when you're 18?
No way.
Not even a clue.
No, I wanted to make $100,000 a year.
Right.
If I made $100,000 a year, dear Lord, please, if I make $100,000 a year, I'll never ask for anything else. You hit $100,000 a year, dear Lord, $500,000. But it's, again, what's this? I forget the statement, but we always underestimate what we can do in 10 years and always overestimate what we can do in a year.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head.
So back then, I would be laying in bed, if I hit $100,000, I was rich. I didn't know anybody else making $100,000 in my life at that point, ever.
No, that's funny because I think that $100,000, it goes from I want to make $100,000 and all the next number's $1 million.
Yeah.
We miss $500,000, 800, it just I had the same conversations with my buddies growing up. Dude, this guy, if we can make 100 G's, we're killing it.
Sure.
Right? And it's just like you said, your advice to your 18-year-old self is think bigger.
Sure.
And I think if I, probably asked you now, is it you're probably still feeling like you're not thinking big enough.
Oh, dude, dinky.
Right.
There's so much there's levels on levels. Once you get to a level, you're like, oh my God, there's so much more out there.
Sure.
It's the sports analogy. If you're playing Pee Wee football at our age, we're going to dominate. You get in the, high school, I might not even dominate, but then college and NFL, there's levels on levels.
Sure.
And then there's levels inside of those levels as guys are running faster, harder, stronger, and then that's where your core unique ability has to really step up. You're not going to be, 180, 6'3" playing defensive line.
Right.
It's more D-back or cornerback or receiver. So you just got to find your unique abilities and focus on your strengths and really dominate that.
Here's kind of a funny question. What would you do if you were invisible for the day?
Well, I'm married now, so this is different.
Okay.
What would I do if I was invisible?
I mean, would you go and get inside of a meeting with certain people that you can overhear, kind of like a fly on the wall, or would you, do something crazy?
It's a good question. I don't know. What would I do? I don't know. I think a lot of times the fly on the wall conversation pieces, I think we all, I don't know how you think on this, but I think